started off as a PG podcast, but then Devin just kept on dropping shits and fucks, and
I'm just trying to figure out what's in her mouth.
I just want to see him interview Francesco Aquilini.
No, he's a good human being, is what he would say about himself, I'm sure.
Who's hosting this thing?
Take charge, Kevin, would you? Jesus.
First time we ever met those guys. That was the major drunken pub argument.
I think you guys are the worst.
I'm going to have to probably watch some Canucks hockey, unfortunately.
Just making friends left, right, and center, and probably some enemies as well.
Tell him to shut up. He needs to hear that every once in a while.
Off to a good start.
All right. We are live.
It's okay to talk when it goes live.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hockey Podcast. You can, of course, follow us on Twitter, podcast_hockey, facebook.com, the Hockey Podcast, youtube.com, the Hockey Podcast, where we currently sit at 100, and the Donald Brashear, former Vancouver Canuck,
Yes.
of subscribers. He did wear the jersey number 87 as well, and he got suspended for things, which players did get suspended. And of course, you can subscribe to the audio shortly after. I'm going to kind of describe this as a weird day in a lot of ways, because I think it was a day we were all expecting. And it was a day that I think I haven't seen Canucks fan Twitter this happy in a long time. And I want to be cautious of how I say that, but it was certainly it was an interesting stream 24 hours. I think actually, as I ramble on here, it was literally 24 hours from this very point 24 and a half hours from this very point that we learned that Travis Green was, that there was a coaching change in Vancouver. Let's say hello to everyone. Hello, Sean.
Hello, Kevin. How are you?
Good. Feel like I'm rambling on aimlessly and, showing that good BCIT education that I got with that diploma that I look at my wall every day. Right, Tyler?
That's right. Yes, it's on the mantle here. Yeah, good to be with you guys. Doesn't it feel like a weight's off the shoulders? Doesn't it just feel like different? It was like -7 outside today. Beautiful sunset. Not snowing yet. It is going to be snowing apparently overnight quite heavily around here, which we aren't looking forward to in my work. But that's an aside. Good news in Canuck land today.
Chris, hello.
Hello, Kevin.
I would like to compliment your mustache that is continuing to grow.
I did recently trim it the other day, so it's no longer hanging off my lip.
That's good.
And Sean has Christmassy things. Devin is going to join us later. He told me, so he's going to run in. So if you have comments, questions, well, it's like kind of like how Bruce Boudreau does. He just runs in mid-season, makes changes, and the world is fine, right?
Drops F-bombs on live TV.
I know.
Devin is the Bruce Boudreau of our podcast.
I know, and we're running like a really professional show here, and then he just comes in and takes over like he owns the damn thing.
It's kind of like how Stan Smyl ran over Francesco Aquilini during the press conference. Anyway, but if you do have any questions, comments, things like that, let us know. Our primary focus today will be what happened in Canucks today. I did do a Hockey Podcast news pack covering pretty much everything else that is happening. There is a lot going on. We could be on for all night, but I think the primary we will touch on some of the. What's that?
We will not be on all night.
No, but no. But I mean, if we were covering everything that was going on in the news. Yeah. We'll touch on a couple of things I think that are interesting, and I think we'll create some debate. But we'll start with yesterday. It was first tweeted by Elliot Friedman that Bruce Boudreau was named as the new coach of the Vancouver Canucks, and I just half joked. I'm sorry, I had to. I'm like, what are they co-coaching? Or is what's are we gonna have a Boudreau Green? Is this tag team coaching? But we learned that Travis Green was let go. We then learned a little bit later that Jim Benning and John Weisbrod and Nolan Baumgartner were let go, and Stan Smyl was confirmed as the interim general manager. Ryan Johnson is the assistant interim general manager, with a group of conglomerate that includes the Henrik and Daniel Sedin and Chris Gear. That conglomerate could be Donnie and Dolly. That could be a band name, by the way, as well. And we've got Scott Walker coming in as an assistant coach. So there's so much to get into, and not only like we have to get into the game on what happened on Saturday as well. So maybe we'll just start with some general thoughts, and we'll start with Chris, and then we'll go Tyler, and then Sean.
As far as the general, like, finally they made a move, I'm glad that it finally happened and that we weren't just like in this slow race to the bottom. And just thank God it's finally over. As far as Bruce Boudreau being the new head coach, I have to say I'm overall relatively a fan. He is a lot more aggressive in the offense, and I think for Petey and Besser to get going, that is definitely going to help. He's known for making highly offensive players better in his 10 years as coach, so I'm hoping that basically this offensive slump that we've been in this season can kind of turn a direction for the better. And as far as Smyl being the new interim GM, he is probably the best person to be in this interim role, because you know that he has the organization's like future like pinned to his sleeve or pinned to his heart or whatever the expression is, and that you know he's going to do whatever it takes to make it the best decision for the franchise moving forward, and he's not going to have really any ego attached to it to make those moves. Or if he eventually gets replaced with a different GM, if they find, a bigger name than him.
For me, I guess, I sort of touched on it already off the top. I'm sure a lot of fans are feeling like some relief, a weight off the shoulders, perhaps even more extreme than that, rejoicing that there's finally change, although, we don't want to kick Travis Green and Jim Benning entirely on the way out here. For me, I think it's, it's 3 or 4 weeks too late, this move. I would have liked to seen this after that 7-1 debacle in Colorado, because if they were serious about salvaging the season and still making a long shot run at the playoffs a la St. Louis a couple of years ago, I think that's when the move would have had to have been made. I mean, anything's possible, but we are past American Thanksgiving. That's usually the unofficial kind of point in time in which you need to be in a playoff spot or close to one in order to actually realistically make it. So now, I mean, I don't think very many people are expecting them to get back in the chase here, and it's more of a look towards next year and trying to restore consumer confidence at this point. Bruce Boudreau, it's a name we tossed around here in the past. He's like a lot of other guys. If you're going to bring someone in with NHL experience, they carry a track record, which is a mixed bag. But for Boudreau, a lot of regular season success. And for the Canucks, they need to figure that part out first before we start talking about playoffs and contending for that Stanley Cup again. And I think a big asset, and you saw it today, is that Bruce is not afraid of the spotlight. He is not going to be uncomfortable, being in front of the camera in a Canadian market. And, obviously there's going to be a honeymoon phase here, which has begun, but we'll see. I don't know if the team struggles and puts up some losing streaks like we've seen the last couple seasons here, then maybe he's going to find that more challenging. But I think that's an asset. And then obviously the big one is, we're all hoping to see a team that's not going to be muzzled offensively.
Yeah. When these things go down, it is tough because if you're showing empathy in any shape or form, you feel bad for the people who got fired. So you feel bad for Benning and Green and Weisbrod and Baumgartner who just couldn't get it done. But that's as simple as it is. They couldn't get it done, and it was time for a change. And the passion, the conviction that Stan Smyl talked with was invigorating. The complete like the energy that Bruce Boudreau brought in his first presser was pretty great as well. And yeah, he is a coach who likes to play a little more up tempo, a little more offensive style, and I actually think that fits this team better. You look at the talent they have up front. Let them run. Let those horses run and see what happens. The other thing is, I think I don't know what it was, but it seemed like they just were, the old guard were stuck in their ways. And getting some new ideas in there is going to be a breath of fresh air, and it's needed. Mm-hmm. Boudreau talked about how a player came up to him and said, "Hey, try me on the penalty kill." We were stuck with basically the same penalty killers that were once the season started for the past 2-3 seasons. There was no shaking things up. There was no trying something different. And I'll be really interested to see what this penalty kill looks like systematically going forwards, because whatever they were doing before wasn't working, and it was a very, very passive penalty kill. They were not pressuring the puck carriers at all, and I think that needs to change. So as much as it sucks to see people lose their jobs, as a Canucks fan, this is a happy day for me, because I haven't felt hope in a long time. It's been since basically before game 1, essentially, that I felt kind of hope. And while I don't think that there's going to be any miracles this season, this is building towards next season, seeing who's going to be part of this, who actually is part of this core, who actually is part of the solution with the Vancouver Canucks, as opposed to who's going to be used as assets to gain more and elsewhere. So this is the beginning of a new era, and I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring up the word hope there, because I was thinking about that when I was driving home from work today. That was one of the things that came to mind right away. Is like, finally we have an opportunity here again now for the Canucks to sell hope to the fan base. And I mean, even for us, I mean, we're outside of watching the games for the purpose of this podcast. I mean, did we have a lot of other reasons to watch here these last few weeks? Because it's like we talked about, we're seeing the same thing being attempted over and over again. The hope wasn't there. The frustration was there. It was becoming like a drain on ourselves watching the game. So that's the big relief there for sure. You talked about Stan Smyl, Sean. I mean, it's just nice to actually listen to somebody with the Canucks backdrop at a press conference that seemed to not be out of touch with the realities that exist within the fan base. I think we saw that. I used the word in our group chat, vulnerability. Stan Smyl was, I think, willing to just be, just show his true feelings on the situation. And he talked about feeling like after the jersey was tossed on the ice on Saturday night that he had to, be more actively involved in the changes here. So, I hope the fans don't turn on Stan and they give this a chance. It's probably going to be a bumpy road back towards some prominence here, but they could not continue beyond Saturday after that scene at Rogers Arena.
I'll get to the scene in a second, because I do have some comments and opinions on this. Hello, Devin.
Hey, boys.
Nice of you to join us. Invade our show here.
What?
We have decided that you're the Bruce Boudreau of our podcast.
Yeah, you just slide in and clean up the mess.
No, he makes mess.
At least I was gonna say, at least you know that you guys are making a bunch of fucking mess.
Yeah. Does that mean we get to fire him in 4 years?
Well, if that's the case, I got about a year and a half.
I want to spend just let's go back. Travis Green seemed out of ideas even at the end of October. Just you heard it in press conferences. You heard this guy, even one of his last raises on Saturday is we have who we have. That was a direct quote he said. I just felt like for the last month he looked lost, and it was very unfortunate. I don't know if I want to say it's a hopeful day, I guess. I'm not going to be stomping on. I've been fired. I know that feeling, and I know that I'm not an NHL executive and an NHL head coach that's making millions of dollars, but it's still not easy. And I do think in terms of Travis Green, I just think he looked lost. I am convinced that he will be better in his next role. But this was a role that there was a disconnect from management, and I would strongly suggest that as the years went on, there was a disconnect with the players as well. And I take that from some things that Bruce Boudreau said today, which maybe we'll get into a little bit later, but it certainly felt like that there was certainly a disconnect with the players.
Yeah, my wonder about that is, why that would be. Is it because Travis Green was trying to take a more old school approach with a younger team, or what was it? He's trying to take an offensively oriented team and get them to play a defensive game. I mean, they didn't do a very good job of playing defensively. So that's what's hard to put a finger on, is what the disconnect was, other than maybe it was just the same voice for too long a period of time. And when you're not having success, nobody's listening anymore.
Well, to go to, I think it was Jake Gensel's, I want to say it was his hat trick. Was it his hat trick goal? Yeah. He had such a long, I mean, by the way, just on a side note, Jake Gensel, completely underrated player, but the guy had 4 hours to pick the corner of Thatcher Demko on that 5-on-3. He had all day. There was literally whatever the strategy, and I'm not going to claim here that I know the strategy of penalty killing here, but whatever that strategy was, clearly a disconnect. Something was absolutely not working, and evidenced by a 64%, which, I'm not a mathematician, but I know that that's not good.
It's just too passive. That's what was talked about here earlier.
Yeah, and that's part of it. Is I think I don't know why it was so passive. I know we had the Canucks had a lot of vets playing the penalty kill, and they were a lot better at staying in lanes and doing that. But this group this year is completely different, and they didn't adjust, and I think that was a big downfall. So I think there was, I think it was a snowball effect of, you kept losing. And then to bring it back to one of the things that Stan Smyl said is you start having finger pointing. Coaches says it's the players. Coaches says it's the management. Players say it's the coaches. And once the finger pointing starts, it's tough to rebound from that. So you have to. It was, like I said, it was just time. It was time. Like if this was sort of a massive house cleaner, or even just like a one person firing out of nowhere, I think this is a completely different conversation, and we're probably maybe defending the person who got fired. But at this point, it was just time.
And that's what Francesco talked about in the press conference today.
And it's just, and I want to look forward now. I'm tired of looking backward and rehashing all these old moves and what has happened in the past. It's time to look forward. It's time to see what Bruce Boudreau will make this team look like going forward. It's time to get excited over what he can bring, and what a bigger role that Ryan Johnson is going to play in this. Maybe even a bigger role that Stan Smyl is going to play now, because talk about someone who is dyed-in-the-wool Canucks. He bleeds all the Canucks colors, that mustard yellow, that off-shade red, black, the yellow on the skate, the red in the skate, the blue, the green, the maroon from the Millionaires jerseys. He bleeds all those colors. And you could tell that what happened on Saturday, the whole thing, not just one certain action, but the whole thing and the culmination of just this frustration he's felt. Like he's ready to incite change within that organization. And I'm going to say this right now: it's make him the president of hockey ops, and bring in a new GM. Have Stan Smyl be the face of that management team. It's like that guy desperately wants to bring the cup to Vancouver. That guy desperately wants to see this organization not be a laughingstock in this league. And he's been in management for years. He's seen it all. He went through the Pat Quinn era. He went through the Brian Burke era. He went through the Mike Gillis era. He's seen it all.
And no disrespect to Trevor Linden, but Stan Smyl doesn't have a side business to potentially distract him with. So if he does get put in the president role, he's fully committed. He is there 100%.
The only thing I would say is, Trevor Linden, Stan Smyl, popular with the fans and the history with the team and former captains and all that. Is Francesco Aquilini truly going to just defer to whatever Stan Smyl recommends? Time will tell on that. History says we should be skeptical on that one.
And it certainly, well, I get Devin's opinion in here by the way, in a moment. But it certainly seems to me that, we have to look a little bit back in the sense that whatever that management structure was under Jim Benning, it certainly didn't seem to me that what struck me, what Stan Smyl said today, was a number of things. So he talked about the finger pointing, but he said it was finally time for me to say something after Saturday. So that management structure as an overall look they need to figure that out for sure. But the one thing that I also would be cautious about, and I think that it's very important to have a guy in your organization that bleeds it. I really do. I think you look at the Flames. I think the fact that Craig Conroy bleeds red, white, the sea red. I think he's not in a general manager role, but he goes out in that community and he does everything, and he breathes it. I think that there's a value to that, but I look at what happened with Kevin Lowe in Edmonton, and I do think that there's some cautionary tale to bringing in a guy like that. And I'm not saying that Stan Smyl is Kevin Lowe, and I think that what I'm hearing from Stan Smyl that is good that I didn't hear from Kevin Lowe is Stan Smyl says you look around the league. He's obviously in tune with what the league is, where Kevin Lowe isn't. But there is some cautionary tale with having only your own people run your organization.
Well, I want to say about Kevin Lowe, he wasn't shy to let everybody know that he had 6 Stanley Cup rings, so his sense of self was maybe a bit of an obstacle to the decision-making process there. That's not something that I think we're going to see out of Stan Smyl or whoever ends up being the permanent general manager.
The other thing I want to point out is he's been in the organization and been in management for years. We're not talking about Trevor Linden coming in off managing a gym, or we're not talking about just any of those Oilers guys who weren't even in management beforehand. We're talking about someone who has been through it all, has been part of management teams that have been successful in the past, and it hasn't been forced into a position too early. Like it's and putting him as president of hockey ops, I think is a spot that he can help guide the team, but he's not the one making he's not the only sole person making the decision. If you bring in a good You get the right GM to work with him, and I don't think you're going to have the same issues as what you had in Edmonton, what you had in basically what you had in Edmonton, where it was just it was the old boys wine club, and that's all they did. They weren't actually helping. Whatever the position is, you have to have Stan Smyl as part of your solution, though.
I don't disagree with that. I don't want to toss in fire in here or toss in a douser in here, but I am, there is situations where there can be a cautionary tale. That's all I'm saying.
I think in the short term, Kev, this was probably the best solution they could put in place.
Absolutely.
They have a coach that is sort of fits the demands of the market. They have a coach that was willing to come on a short-term contract, and they have somebody in-house in the organization that, to everything that Sean's talked about, has the background necessary to sort of take the reins here on a short-term basis while they, take extra time to arrive at the right decision here. So, because everybody can see clearly they did not have this plan B sorted out before the season started, so they had to do something now. They could not go into the game tonight after what happened on Saturday with the same thing in place. And I think people at this point, although there's reasons to be skeptical, should be pretty happy with what they've put in place here over the last 24 hours. And now we'll just, see if there's immediate results.
Well, I think before Devin chimes in, I think the one thing that I think is striking here for sure is who was fired. It was Benning and it was Weisbrod. And I wonder, I wonder if it was the Benning and Weisbrod show, and they never let Stan Smyl in. They never let the Sedins in. They never let Ryan Johnson in. It was their show. They were going to do whatever the hell they wanted to. And I think Stan, it just seems to me that Stan was like, you know what, I've had enough. I had enough. I was embarrassed.
On a hit that Corey Hirsch. Go ahead.
I was going to say, we all should have felt like it was a bit odd in the offseason when the Sedins were named, and you have these presences just there kind of lurking around while the existing management's in place. You know what I mean? Like, that whole dynamic seemed a little bit silly. So, yeah, to your point, Kevin, you could definitely see a scenario where Benning and Weisbrod would be kind of closed off to those other opinions. Maybe they would ask for, some input from them, but was it a truly collaborative management process? Probably not. I mean, the way the team was run, it didn't seem to change much.
And to add to that, Corey Hirsch, during one of his hits today, I can't remember if it was on the fourth period or with Donnie and Dolly, but he did mention, and he also did concede that he doesn't have insider knowledge, so it's more just speculation. But he said it definitely seemed like Weisbrod and Benning definitely operated more in isolation as opposed to collaboration with other people in management. So it definitely is not surprising that pairing got fired together.
All right, Devin, we haven't had a chance to hear from you, and you've been patiently waiting.
You know what? I want to say that I have been patiently waiting. I've been wanting to jump in, but my internet connections have been a bit shit. So I apologize if I sound a bit robot-y or whatever. But overall, I still, the fact that it got to a point where you had the fans very upset, and obviously, not the first time we've seen jersey thrown on the ice, an incident like that happening. But the fact that it got to that point, I think, from my personal opinion, is unacceptable. This, no matter what, it would have been the same outcome. I truly believe if they were going to pull that trigger, you'd have the exact same people in place, or pretty much close to it, coming into this situation with the Boudreau and Stan Smyl. I don't mind the hire of Boudreau. I think he's a bit of a lighter person. Obviously, I don't know exactly how that room was with Green in it, but with Boudreau coming in, that he'll try and keep it a bit lighter. I think he'll be a bit more potentially personable with the players, and all that I've heard today is that he is very much a offensive minded type of coach, and I think that's exactly what you really want right now, especially with the way that Patterson's playing, and just overall, Brock Besser, I don't think he's been playing at his best. I mean, the entire team has not been playing at their best. So it could bring some fun back into the game. And so I really don't mind having that hire with Boudreau behind the bench. I'm very curious to see how that all goes and how he's going to implement his systems. But the fact that he's going to be here for a year and a half, I think is beneficial to him because it's, more so to Boudreau than the team, just because he has he doesn't have much expectations, but if he does well, hey, he'll probably get an extension easily enough by the end of the year.
Yeah, and in the short term, if another general manager is named before the season is over, I mean they can live with it, an incumbent coach. We've seen that done before. It's not really the ideal way to go about this. The ideal way would have been to do a house cleaning in the off season and then have the general manager hire a coach. But again, that would have been part of the plan B had there been one thought out, which we don't believe that there was. So outside of that, this is the best solution because clearly, yeah, they could have fired Jim Benning, but if you leave Travis Green in place, do you really think that tonight's game would look any different? No.
There was no ideal solution.
No.
Aquilini did own up to the fact that he let it go too long in the presser. He said he felt like he was being a little too optimistic, but it was time for a change. He probably and we've gotten to this discussion, man, through multiple times over the past 4 weeks about how when's the shoe going to drop, because it's going to do is get worse, right? And I think there was a bit of some isolationism with Benning and Weisbrod because I think they felt the heat. That's just pure speculation on my part, but I think that was what it was. They tried to keep things close to the vest, and it didn't work. The fact that the Boudreau thing came out and then everything got leaked way before Vancouver was able to actually announce it says a lot about what was going on in that management office.
Mm-hmm.
They just it wasn't a good spot, so you got to fix it. And yeah, I'm excited. I think I wouldn't put Stan Smyl in the GM role, but I want him part of the team. And you look at what teams have had the best success. It's been more collaboration than just one person holding all the power, one or two people holding all the power. It's been more of a collaboration effort. So you have to come in and have that willingness to do that. And I think if there's anything that's come out of that, and I know Francesco did not talk about this properly. Like he stumbled over his words when asked about what he learned over the past 8 years, and he just muttered something about culture. But I think that's true. I think whatever culture that was in the Canucks front offices, the Canucks hockey operations, was not good, and it wasn't getting you weren't getting the best out of the people in there. You weren't getting the best out of the coaches. You weren't getting the best out of the players. So I'm excited because I think you're gonna get some different voices now. Stan Smyl has stepped up, and he's basically the de facto GM at this point. Chris Gear is going to get a bigger role. Ryan Johnson is going to get a bigger role. They're going to listen more to the Sedins because the Sedins were basically shuttled off to Abbotsford and to help learn the ropes kind of there. But I bet it sounds like they're going to be more involved now. But you still have to find that right fit of whether it is one president and one GM or a GM or whatever. You have to find that right fit. And just making the move yesterday of getting rid of Jim Benning and Sean Weisbrod is only part of the equation. You got to make sure that this next hire is right, and this next hire is able to take the team from where it is now, which is not good, and improve on it. and get it to a point where they're contending for the playoffs and contending to go deep into the playoffs.
Now, do you guys think that it's a possibility that Luongo would be thinking about, or they would be talking to Roberto Luongo for the GM job?
No.
I generally think that they're going to try and go with someone with more experience and is more established, which is basically the opposite direction as what they went with the last regime. Whether you want to talk about Green, whether you want to talk about Benning, it was basically all these people who had some experience, but not a lot, and especially not in the role that they were being hired for. I feel like after the last 8 years, they want to make up for that mistake and definitely go with someone that's maybe not like old school, but just someone that's a little bit more veteran and established.
The fact that there hasn't been a new permanent general manager named to this point, I would imagine that at the higher levels of the organization, they've probably kicked around a few names, but they probably haven't done a very deep dive into, exactly what they're looking for yet. In regards to Luongo, I think it's everybody can probably see he's pretty happy with his situation there in Florida, and probably wouldn't be interested in coming out here anyways. So, they'll probably at this point name a general manager. If not before the trade deadline sometime, then definitely by the end of the regular season, so they have something in place for the draft and free agency.
Betting money. Sorry, go ahead, Sean.
The reason I said flat out no is you touched on a little bit there, Kev, or Tyler. I don't think Luongo has any appetite to leave where he's at right now. Florida is where his family's at. I know Vancouver is the second home, but I still think he knows he still needs to learn the ropes a bit, and I'm sure he talked to Trevor Linden and understand that that's jumping in the deep end, and you need to have the skills to handle it. The only way that would work is if you had a president of hockey ops that can help, like a veteran who can help him. But I think they may look at it, but I think when you consider everything, I don't see it. As Francesco said it multiple times, everything's on the table, whether or not it's realistic or not, but everything's on the table.
Mm-hmm. And then when they do pick a successor, what then needs to be on the table is, going through the whole thing top to bottom, scouting staff, player development, all of that. Over the years, the defenders of Jim Benning, including myself, really liked his work with scouting and drafting. But, now that you're at the end point here and look at the last 8 years, yeah, there were some hits there, but still a lot of kind of meh in the draft and a lot of misses, and then a lot of fairly good selections that were lost for not very much or nothing entirely on waivers. Yeah, Kevin.
I'm sorry. Picking Danila Klimovich over Logan Stankoven was one of those bizarre, I cannot understand for the life of me what in the hell you were doing. That was one I have kept this in my heart. God love Chris Faber and his write-ups of Danila Klimovich, but really?
Well, if you want to go really, again, and I hate to bring it up because it's painful for Canuck fans, but Matthew Tkachuk was there, and they took Ole Ulevi.
Did you see Devin Smyl?
And Ole Ulevi, at the time, yes, the organizational need was defense, and yes, he was a highly touted defenseman coming through from Finland. He was dealt for not very much, not nothing. They have, they have Lamico playing. On most teams, probably an AHL player, though.
He was just called up today by the Panthers. He's been in the minors, and he's what's called up today. That kind of sums it up. That and the Louis Eriksson, the free agent signing. Those two. I'm not going to go through every transaction Jim Benning made, but really, those are the two that kind of sting the most for me.
Yeah, I don't want to go back through all those ones. I think it's one thing. I think it's way too early to make that. I know you're a Logan Stankoven stan there, Kev, but it's still really early. And the fact that Klimovich, they kept him in AHL says a lot to me. But the Benning has been so hit and miss. He either hit home runs or he was striking out on 3 pitches. It seems like, and
yeah. The only thing
I think part of it was like you saw how Judd Brackett left, right? Wasn't happy, left. Even Gilman, I think Gilman felt shoved aside too, and he was, I think part of it, he was a bit of a control freak and not willing to have the confidence and the willingness to collaborate properly. And that's, as I said, that's what you need in this day and age.
Yeah. Yeah. The only thing I'll say is it's not that I'm sitting here and staying COVID-ing this as much as there were other picks in that area that you could have picked, and you probably could have got Klimovich in a later round. I think that's the only thing. That's just how I look at it. But that's
ifs, ands, and buts, though. Like, honestly, we don't know.
That's fair.
I do this with drafts all the time. Like, go back to the Virtanen draft. They could have had Ehlers and Pasternak.
Everybody passed on Pasternak.
Nylander and Pasternak.
Yeah,
everybody passed on Pasternak.
Funny that you bring up that draft class too. Instead of Tryamkin, guess who went a couple picks after Tryamkin? Braden Point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's
there's lots of that goes.
Yeah. There's lots of that. You can do that with every team, though.
Yeah. I only brought up the Juolevi Tkachuk thing because Kevin's bringing up
high pick.
That's clearly a lower profile decision that was made than that one. The one going back to 16, I think, that draft. So,
but this is the start of the next era. This is the start of the next regime, and as I said, the next hire is what's going to define this. You cannot get this wrong.
It'll be interesting to see, what sort of higher level philosophy the next management regime will take. In the Benning Weisbrod era, there was clearly a desire to mine the NCAA for players and a lot of American talent, and will we see the next regime kind of go back to more the Canadian major junior route and kind of find talent there? That'll be interesting for me to see. And then, of course, what kind of talent are they going to draft to fit some kind of a style of play that they want to implement? It might be fun and exciting for everybody to get interested again to play more of a run and gun offensive style here, but long term, not sure how sustainable that is and how that's going to work in the playoffs. But at this point, you can't. There's only one way to go, really, and that's up. And if Boudreau is going to let the offensive horses run wild, I'm all for it.
The only thing I will say is, and I admit my bias when I say this, but there is proof and there is evidence that the WHL, in terms of juniors, and you look at, I like what Chris Roy said on the podcast yesterday when we were doing the World Junior Preview. He was talking about, you get the OHO is a hybrid of high-end, tough grinder out. The Q is high-end offense, and the W is a bit of a grinded out, kind of harder game to play. But I will say, I think the WHL player seems to come out a bit more prepared than the other junior players. And I'm speaking from I will admit that I am speaking from a place of bias on that, but I've heard Rich Sutter kind of talk about that with the Columbus Blue Jackets. He said one of the things that I think they need, and he admitted he's being biased, they need more WHL players. And people would be like, well, that's ridiculous, but it is an area that I do think the Canucks haven't grinded out maybe as well as they could, considering the talent that is in this area and that has been picked. Some before, some after, but that is, I admit my bias there, but.
Well, I think that's just part of it. So you have to, as Tyler said, you have to start going through this organization with a fine-tooth comb. And one of the biggest ones is A, scouting, and B, player development. You have to look at that and look at it seriously. I know they kept singing the praises of Trent Cull and everything, but we still haven't seen many players come out of that have been truly developed by the Canucks farm team, whether it was the Utica Comets or now the Abbotsford Heat. We haven't really seen it.
And I think one of the things that I heard today that, sorry if I interrupted someone, but one of the things that I heard today that I haven't heard in a while was the words identity and hard to play with. And Stan Smyl said both. And I haven't heard the word identity related to anything Canucks for a long time.
Well, at least coming out of a Canucks, like brass's mouth.
And when he was saying it, you could almost hear the exasperation in his voice when he was talking about it, how frustrating it was for him to watch a team on the ice with no identity. And you bring that up. I mean, Daryl Sutter just talked about that not too long ago in terms of how the Flames have turned it around. Wasn't that just so striking to listen to that when, from a Canucks fan point of view? It's like, whoa, why don't we have that?
Why can't we have that?
Yeah, makes you wonder if the higher ups in the Canucks organization took note of that as well.
I was going to bring that up. I was wondering how that, I don't want to say that how the Daryl, but what has happened in Calgary, and even I don't want to say as much, but even what's going on in the Pacific Division. I mean, even Vegas, as much as I'm not completely sold on them, there is an identity there. They are hard to play against. The Oilers are trying to be a team that is hard to play against, and you're hearing words of identity. And I think maybe that's and you brought in someone with a lot more experience. You brought in a Daryl Sutter in Calgary. You bring in a Ken Holland as a GM in Edmonton. You wonder, and Stan Smyl mentioned a veteran coach. You wonder how much that veteran experience and identity played into what happened. And
it felt like back in the bubble hockey, and I hate bringing it up because just, there's so much has changed since then, and it's a couple of years ago now. But I mean, we weren't having questions about identity back then. There seemed to be, I can't describe what it is, but it looked like something, right? You know what I mean? It looked like a bunch that was going to just dig in hard to block the shooting lanes, to get it out, and just kind of will their way towards the other end of the ice and get the puck into the net. And you look at everything that's missing from that team: Tanev, Markstrom, Stetcher, Toffoli. That's been the big miscalculation in hindsight from ownership is, they clearly didn't think that those losses were as big as they really were. I mean, this team has been lost ever since then.
And might I suggest that the Canucks fan base, in general, has also underestimated that. And maybe it's I
think maybe collectively, yeah. I mean, a lot was made about Toffoli. I mean, he was only there for from trade deadline to the end of their bubble run. So, yes, he was an impact, and yes, he went on to Montreal to do very well. But it's more on the other guys. I mean, Chris and Troy and Markstrom in particular, like the compete level that those guys brought to the equation every night. I mean, you look at the team the last year and a half, and it's hard not to draw a connection between the two there and say that something's missing. That's just that desire factor.
Yeah. Okay, can we talk about the jersey? I know that.
For it, Kev.
Yeah. I'm going to start. I realize sometimes when I'm getting into this media game that sometimes I don't think like everyone else. And I often don't think that I wonder if sometimes I wonder if I'm a fit with the cool kids. I got to be honest with you. Some of the takes that I heard about this jersey this weekend, I was appalled by. When a guy that has given his heart and soul for this organization and has spent as much time with this organization and has played in the National Hockey League for as long as John Garrett did, said what he said, to me, from my perspective, the response shouldn't be, what is the big deal? It's just clothing. The response should be, we need to listen to what he has to say. That was an embarrassment. That really was an embarrassment. That should not happen. I'm not saying that a fan does not have a right to do whatever the heck he wants in terms of a within reason.
Well, throwing objects onto the ice is, that's enough. It's an offense to get you banned from the arena.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, it's just an article of clothing. It's not really a danger, but you are stepping out of line doing that.
Yeah, but those that are saying that the jersey toss led to the change. I was really appalled by what I heard.
You don't think that at least at the very least, Kevin, cemented the change if there was some amount of uncertainty, indecision left in that choice?
Well, my response to that is if that is what creates change in this organization has a bigger problem than we care to admit.
Yeah. Well, I know. I mean, that's been talked about by a few people here. I mean, it was talked about weeks ago where we're hearing, scuttlebutt from people that have better connections than we do, saying that they're kind of waiting to see how the fans react to the next few games. Well, we got a pretty strong reaction on Saturday. It wasn't just the jersey tossed onto the ice. There was the firefighting chance, and then in the concourse there was sell the team. Maybe that was the one that finally got the Aquilinis to take action.
My biggest issue is that, again, yeah, I agree with you, Kev. The fact that people were applauding it and saying and celebrating it and everything, and saying that it's pathetic, is what it is. You should be angry that it's gotten to that point. You should be sad that it's gotten to that point. You should be frustrated that it's gotten to that point. You shouldn't be applauding the person who did it. You should be angry at the organization that it's gotten to the point where that person felt that that's what they had to do. This isn't the time to applaud a stupid act like that, a disrespectful act like that. This is a time to demand change, not do that. My biggest issue with the way a lot of many, not a lot, but a group of Canucks Twitter act is that it feels like they're more about the clout of doing something than actually cheering for the team. They're more about getting likes and clicks and engagement on their tweets than it is about cheering for the team.
And I'd like to know how many of those people were crapping all over Leaf fans or Oilers fans when the same thing was going on in other places. You got to think there's at least a few people that are, that are being hypocrites on this particular one.
Yep. And I'll tell you, where were people mocking the Oilers when they tossed their jersey? There were people mocking the Habs when they tossed their jersey just this week. And there were people mocking the Leafs when they tossed their jersey. And then all of a sudden you're saying that this is insight for change. I'm sorry, if you've done that, you are a hypocrite, flat out.
I mean, it is what it is. It's a statement of frustration. I don't think that the average fan would take that kind of thing very lightly. It's just a bad sign for your place in the sport and where you're at with your fandom when you see something like that go on. It's not something to be celebrated, period.
And the other thing is that, it was designed to upset people. So the fact that you're applauding it, you're actually taking it away. That act is designed to incite anger and frustration and sadness, not celebration that someone actually fucking did it. Like that's how angry I was with some of those takes. And I got into it with some people on Saturday about it. Like, John Garrett has every right to explain that, and you don't have to mock him for it.
Yeah, that to me, that really bothered me. That like the fact that you have the, I don't even know what the word is. The only word that comes up to my head is the arrogance to assume that you know more about what that jersey means to a guy that has spent 50 years in this league. You need to sit down. You need to seriously sit down. You don't know what that jersey means. You don't know what he has went through night in, night out to represent that Canucks jersey or that Flames jersey or that Leafs jersey or what Graham Mosamins wore that Ilya Bryzgalov jersey last week. You don't know unless you've been through it, and you sit on your keyboard warrior thinking that you understand. You do not understand. Like, you simply don't. And the arrogance. And, Sean is right. There are people in this Twitter community and Canucks Twitter, I think, that's far more interested and clout and retweets and thinking that they're more cool than school than actually cheering and supporting this team.
Yeah,
and
there's a lot of that on Instagram too. I mean, that's the world we live in. It's social media, is it? And clout and all of that. I mean, that's a bigger discussion. I just want to add though, Kevin. I mean, John Garrett's an easy target. He's a color analyst. They're all targets so it doesn't. I mean, people are sitting there frothing to criticize the guy before even one word's come out of his mouth on the broadcast. So I wouldn't take it too serious, that kind of commentary about what John Garrett has to say. But I agree with you though.
But the problem though is that it's not. There are people not listening. There are people more interested in their actual opinion than they are actually having the humility.
Humility on Twitter, yeah.
No, but hear me out though, Tyler, because I think that this is part of the problem that is we are getting to the point in life where we think that we know all the answers, and what I'm learning is we don't know fuck all.
Yeah, and
I just wish that it's sometimes that there would just be a level of humility in some of the Twitter and clout and Canucks Twitter, or even in Twitter in general, say, you know what, I was wrong. That was not cool what I said. I have to take that back. Not because I'm being piled on Twitter, but upon serious reflection, that was a dumb take, and I don't, I haven't heard from Devin and Chris, and maybe I'm insane or to thinking this way. But
as far as the likelihood of it, definitely. And I don't want to make this a political thing. I'm just using it as a comparison. But like the act of doubling down has become incredibly popular ever since Trump became into the general picture as president. So I feel like that has kind of led to and bled into social media as far as like the thing to do is as soon as you are attacked, you don't have a critical thought and be like, oh, maybe I did something wrong. No, you automatically double down and immediately assume that they're still wrong and basically go into a finger pointing game.
I mean, it's either that or they just turtle and, they leave the conversation, right? Because they either don't have enough balls to admit that, or they just don't want to deal with it anymore, right? But I mean, I really don't know exactly what happened as far as the Twitter war or conversation of mocking John Garrett or whatever. I can't speak to the jersey toss. I mean, it to me, the jersey toss, it gets to a point where you feel like you, as a fan, are not heard, and you want to see some sort of change, and that's the only way that you can really do it, realistically, right? Because you're not heard on social media; it's just echoing through the universe of nothingness, and the only time that you actually can do something is. I don't agree with it, but I can understand the thought process behind it. And so, I mean, I don't agree with it, but I understand from a fan's perspective the passion where it comes from and why you want to do it. So it's unfortunate that it happened, but overall, I do understand the sentiment, but I don't really agree with it.
Like I said earlier, I think the jersey toss, probably cemented the move, but the bigger ones, I think that we're already getting the attention of ownership would be ticket sales, merchandise sales, and I don't know if they have the ability to see the TV ratings, but I suspect those were sagging pretty hard as well. And they look at all those things, and then there was a fairly early exodus of fans on Saturday. Then the chanting, then the jersey toss. You put all of that together, it's not just about the jersey toss. It's all those other things. They see people losing interest. That the wheels are in motion for this change already, clearly.
Mm-hmm. One last thing I want to add about the jersey toss, though. I also want to just bring in an interesting thought of to be able to throw a piece of $200 and some value away onto the ice without probably expecting to get it back, which they probably did after Dumoulin brought it back to them. But the intention of just throwing on the ice and essentially throwing it away comes from a place of privilege. Also a person that probably was sitting in the lower bowl to begin with. And I realize it's not what it used to be back in like the 2010, 2011 era, but those lower bowl tickets in Vancouver are expensive.
Oh, yeah.
So to be able to afford a ticket to the lower bowl, to be able to think that you can just throw away a $200 piece of merchandise just to prove a point comes from a place of privilege. I just want to throw that in there.
The only other thing is like if I didn't like the hire of Bruce Boudreau, should I throw a jersey on the ice to protest it? Like, should we get into that? Like, is that how we're gonna constitute?
I'm gonna step in here and say no.
No, I'm kidding. I'm not saying that you should do that. But that's,
again,
like,
throwing objects onto the playing surface is an offense to get you banned.
No, I don't. But this is how people are thinking. It's like, oh well, throwing a jersey on the ice, that constitutes how we can make change. Like, that's how idiotic it sounds. Your response to my question, if I don't like the Bruce Boudreau hire ice to throw a jersey on the ice, is illustrated how stupid it is to throw a jersey on the ice.
And then, like I said, I think it's no, but I'm with Devin in terms of I think it's a last ditch attempt to get the attention of the power players who have the ability to make the change. Whether it would be a GM to fire the coach or a president to fire the GM or the owner to fire the GM type deal. I get it. It's not something I would do. My issue is that it's not something you should applaud.
Yeah.
It's not something you should be happy has happened. It's something you should be angry and pointing out, this is what you made us do. This is what you made a fan do because of your inability to make a change, your inability to make a decision. And the way I look at it is, and from what Stan Smyl talked about, how when that happened and everything else that happened during that game, he felt he had to speak up. And I think when he spoke up, I think that was what I honestly think that the Boudreau the Green and Boudreau swap was already in place before that game. They were just waiting to make it official. But I think when that happened, the everything that happened in that game, as well as how other previous home games that have happened, the Smyl stepped up and said, "No, it's time. It's time." And that was betting in Weisbrod's the final nail in their coffin.
It was mentioned on Donnie and Dolly today, and a good point. There was the news out of Philadelphia as well that coaching changes there. Lane Vigneault is out, and I think an assistant there as well, if I'm not mistaken. Thank you. You have to wonder if maybe they caught wind of that and wanted to be more patient here, but said, okay, we got to make this move now and get Boudreau signed in case he's a candidate for that opening potentially as well. So that just wanted to mention that might have been a factor in the timing here as well.
And if we're discussing Canucks Twitter, I just want to say, imagine how Canucks Twitter would have exploded if AV getting fired happened before Boudreau being hired. I'll just leave it at that.
Devin, I feel like we've interrupted you a couple of times. But you're on mute, by the way.
No, I'm you guys are taking reins of this, and I like it. It's fine.
Okay.
He's just there to look good.
He's there. He's here to look good.
Always with his beautiful they're not plywood jerseys. What do we call them? Wood jerseys? What do we call them?
If you had told the
what's the official description of
it's wood jerseys.
Wood jerseys.
Yes,
okay,
they're not plywood. Sure. Plywood is just like, God, it's a shitty wood. This is good for quality.
Really expensive for shitty wood, apparently, these days.
Well, there goes a collaboration there, Tyler.
Yeah. By the way, speaking of collaboration, maybe we'll just take a quick time, Sean, to talk about the Pig and Duke before I jump in and ask the big awkward question that I don't think a lot of people are asking, but I want to ask.
Yeah, so we will have we're working with the Pig and Duke. They've got 2 locations here in Calgary, 12th and 12th and 4th and 4th. You can join the Pig and Puck Club at either location. You can get entered in to win tickets to the April 23rd game between Vancouver and Calgary here in Calgary. And then you can also retweet any of our episodes, any of our pod clips, any of our game recaps to get entered into to get an entry into that into the Pick and Puck Club, and as well as you'll be, if you can DM us at podcast_hockey, the word of the week, and this week's word will be hope, because that is what we finally have in Canucks land. And you'll get 3 extra entries into that contest. Devin, Chris, and I will all be going to that game as hosts, along with Steven at the Pig and Duke. And we would love to have you there and to talk hockey. You can talk smack at Devin, tell him how he needs to pick a table and pick a team. Or you can tell Chris that his mustache is dirty. Or you can yell at me for whatever. Like it's going to be a fun night. As Devin pointed out last episode, it's a Saturday, so you can really enjoy it.
Oh, Saturday means an 8:00 start too.
Yeah, you can really enjoy it. And like I said, so please retweet any of our episodes, pod clips, or game recaps to get 1 entry, and DM us the word of the week, which this week is hope, and you'll get 3 extra entries into that. And hopefully we'll see you at the Pig and Duke before we go to the game, or even before that.
And if you haven't already learned,
be making a late push for it there too at that time, maybe. Just maybe.
And I was just going to quickly add on to Sean's thing of, if you haven't already learned, both shit talking and hot takes are encouraged.
Oh yeah, yes,
and beers.
That's it. Cheers to that.
Yeah.
So the one other thing I wanted to touch on, that is a bigger conversation, but there's been a lot of, it's been Benning, it's been Green. I mean, there has been player criticism. We've heard the criticism of Miller. We've heard the criticism of Patterson. We've heard the criticisms of Besser, and we believe that Bruce Boudreau, you're our only hope. You see how I Obi-Wan that. But let's just bring it out. We were gonna bring this up last week. Is this core good enough? I want to hear from Devin first.
Ooh, this is fun. You know what? It's, if you look at the entirety of the core being a part of the Canucks, I think that you do have, like the word of the day, hope, that they're able to get back to where they want to be and where everybody is expecting them to be. Listen, at least Patterson is better than what he's playing right now, easily. He's flat out that he's that good of a player. I remember talking about this at the beginning of the year. I think it was 2 years ago. Who would you rather have, Austin Matthews or Elias Patterson? We vividly had a hard, long conversation about that. And I still think he's that player. I still think that he's able to have those dynamic game-changing moves, plays in him. And I think Bruce Boudreau would be a great coach to help bring him out, bring that out of him again. Bo Horvat, he's a captain in this league. He's been a captain since they drafted him. Was all part of the reason why, they drafted him, because they knew he had leadership skills. Quinn Hughes, his first year was amazing. He's been on a slow decline, but it doesn't mean he's still not a dynamic player. So I still think that they are as good as, everybody really wants them to be, and that they just need to find the right voice and have the right confidence level. If Bruce Boudreau can get that confidence back, I wouldn't be surprised if they make a late push, like Tyler was saying, at the end of the year. And if they don't, hey, the biggest thing is trying to get their confidence back and start rolling in the right direction, like Sutter did with Calgary last year. This core, I think, is good enough. Yes.
Sean was going to chime in, and I interrupted him, so I'll let Sean.
I said that's a big part of what the rest of the season is finding out, A, is this core good enough, and B, who's part of this core. Is this a bigger core where you are including people like JT Miller, you are including people like Niels Höglander and Vasily Podkolzin, or is this a smaller core where it's literally just Hughes and Demko and Petey, if he can get back to the the way he has played in the past. Like I expect him to do. I expect him. I think for me, that's a big question. I believe that the pieces, at least up front, I believe the pieces are in place for this team to be a good offensive team. They've got a goaltender who I believe is a top 10 goaltender in this league. Defensively, they've got Quinn Hughes, who is having a rebound season after his second season, which was hell. They've got OEL, who, yeah, he's overpaid, but he's still a good top 4 defenseman who can move the puck. Now, the rest of that decor is a huge question mark for me. Mm-hmm. Who else can the Canucks go into and rely on going forwards? Can Bruce Boudreau bring out the best in Tyler Myers, who is as Wyatt Arndt calls him, the chaos giraffe? Like, I think that's it. Not only is this core good enough a question, who is a part of this core is a question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna double down on what I said last week. I don't think the core is good enough. I don't think it's far off the mark, but I don't think it's good enough. You're not moving Quinn Hughes. And Petey, it's way too early to be giving up on Petey, and clearly he's better than what we've seen this year. I think with Horvat and Besser, that's where the tougher questions lie. I think with Besser, we've seen enough to know what he is. He's not as multi-dimensional as some of the other names tossed around as part of the core. And then with Horvat, I mean, I'm a big Horvat guy, but he's not on the same echelon of star power as Hughes and Patterson, for example. So those are things that'll have to be evaluated once the new regime goes into play here.
I haven't thought about
as far as whether the current core is good enough. Like I think if they're all playing up to their abilities, that they definitely could be considered good enough. It's just if they are all rolling at the same time. I'll admit my bias, but like I think Horvat is a part of the actual integral core to this team. Maybe not just from his offensive numbers, but from his leadership. The fact that he was like essentially a student of the Sedins as he was coming up. I think if you removed him from that core, that it would seriously mess up the vibe and the confidence of that core. The only other untouchables that I'd probably throw in there, the obvious ones are obviously Demko, Hughes, and Petey. Besser could be a question mark. JT Miller could be like a piece that you could move to potentially advance the team if you want to. But as far as the core of the team, I think they are good enough. It's just whether they are on a roll or not.
So I have a hot take that I'm going to just relate here from the Flames that I'm going to toss in when we talk about Bo Horvat. I think the Flames will miss Michael Backlund more than they will miss Mike Giordano when he leaves. I think Michael Backlund is such a part of the fabric of the Flames when he is on his game, and it's not necessarily when he's scoring, but when he is able to match up that number one line on the other team, they are tough. The Flames are tough to beat. They are. Like, you just look at it. And that's where I see Bo Horvat, that if Bo Horvat can get to that Michael Backlund type of player, and I see it in him, I think the Canucks will be a tougher team to play against. I would be very loath to give up on Bo Horvat. I think that is that's not a guy I would be giving up on. I would put him in the core. I think the one guy that we're not talking about that I just don't think he's been used right so far is Conor Garland. I think that this is a guy, he's so good with the puck, so good at turning into corners, gets into the fabric of the game. That's one guy I am very curious about. That makes me wonder if you can give up on a Brock Besser for that core defenseman. But I mean, and you have other pieces there that you could make a trade for Brock Besser, but again, like, it's hard to. I do think Brock Besser can be an elite goal scorer in this league. So I'm going to hold out. I'm going to say the jury's still out. I want to see what that is. I want to see how this organically develops with Boudreau, going forward. But one guy I want to see more of is Conor Garland. I just don't think he's been used right so far.
The thing with I agree with you there, Kev. That's kind of where I was at. I want to see what comes out of this coaching change before making a decision on whether or not this core is good enough or not. But they have to make a decision about on Brock Besser. He's an RFA at the end of this season, and I believe he's sort of in the same similar situation to Tkachuk, in that he becomes a free agent after next season. I'm going to just quickly double check that, but either way, they're going to have to make a decision on him, and that blue line is not good enough, and you need to find a way to rejig this roster and rejig the. It's again similar to what Tkachuk's up. It's higher than his cap hit and significantly.
I believe it's $7 million.
But sorry, no, his UFA year is 2024. So you still got a couple years, but you still have to make a decision on him, and you still have to figure out within the cap, how can you improve that blue line within the cap, also look at what is your strength right now, and how can you use that to help strengthen a part of your team that is not as strong. That's a big part of that of Stan Smyl, the Sedins, Ryan Johnson, and Chris Gear currently, and whoever gets named the GM or whoever else gets brought in. That is a big part of that of their job, is to figure out how they can strengthen that blue line to a point where we aren't looking at that right side and going ugh. Because that's kind of where we're at right now. But
I think what the move that comes before that, Sean, is trying to salvage those offensive assets into something that would net a decent return in a trade. Because right now, it's like we've talked about over and over here, is dealing from a position of weakness. I mean, really, their true strength is Thatcher Demko, and he's not going anywhere. So who do you move right now to make a deal? At this point, I would say there isn't a good deal to be made. But we'll see now with the new coach and how things can turn around, and maybe perform some better asset management here.
And that's part of why bringing Bruce Boudreau in was a smart move.
Yeah,
because you look at what assets should be better, what players should be better, have better value on the trade market than they currently have. It's a lot of the forwards, because no matter what, like Ekman Larson and Myers, who are two big ticket defensemen, I don't think teams are touching that. And even if they do, you're not getting much of a return. Just because of cap management. So you have to find a way. That what this team looks like now is not going to be close to what it looks like at the start of next season. There will be moves, and there will be key players moved out.
Yeah.
Unless Boudreau pulls off a miracle, and
a Berube, if you will,
it's just going to be there's going to be changes. And Tyler Mott's another player that I think you could get value for if you at the deadline, if you potentially. But again, that's someone I think you keep. That's someone I think you find a way to keep, because you need players like that. You talk about identity. That's someone who creates it. So there's some tough decisions coming up for whoever's in charge. And yeah, I look at, you've got Brock Besser needs a new contract after this season. Tyler Mott as well. And then you have next season, you've got Bo Horvat and JT Miller need new contracts. Niels Höglander is going to be off his ELC. Well, the next couple of years are going to be huge in terms of reshaping this roster to what it should look like going for 2-3 years after that. And hopefully you have players like Podkolzin, like Höglander stepping up, like a Jack Rathbone. Talk about a player who I think it fits a mold for Bruce Boudreau is Jack Rathbone.
Dylan chimes in with a trade offer. Besser and Myers for Manson and Raquel plus a conditional kick based on the Canucks to resign one or both.
Really nicely thought out trade here.
I take it and run.
That's a high quality suggestion.
I take it
that
and run.
A troll job.
Yeah, I think, so it'll be interesting to see how that organically develops. I think for the rest of the year, and we'll be here to talk about it, and it'll be fascinating. It's going to be a fascinating second half of the season for whatever happens in Vancouver land, for sure.
Just a couple of things we haven't really touched on. Bradshaw is now going to be on the bench, coaching the defense. Scott Walker is going to be working with the penalty kill. Good luck, Godspeed, and thoughts and prayers to Scott Walker there.
Well, what did Ted Lasso? I mean, Bruce Boudreau say? You can't get worse.
So it's I think we saw Podkolzin is now on the quote unquote first power play unit with Petey in the bumper spot. So that's a big bump up for him. I saw the lines. You've got Podkolzin, Garland being centered by Patterson. You have Pearson, Horvat, and Höglander, which we know has been a good line in the past. Dickinson, Miller, and Besser. So I'm really looking forward to watching this game in a few minutes and seeing seeing if there's a bit more energy in with this team, a bit more life in those legs, because after watching the past few games, like I said, it was time for change and we got it. So now it's time for these players to step up and prove that they're worth being part of this team going forwards.
Fair. Yeah. Let's just touch on a couple of other quick things here. That I did want to get into. Winnipeg and Toronto got into a bit of a brew. Devin, Dubois, and Austin Matthews. Neil Pionk has been suspended 2 games. Jason Spezza has an in-person hearing, which could be a 5 games or not. We don't know. It's kind of fun to see that rivalry stuff, though. That, to me, at least that's great theater. And Logan Stanley and all of that. Did you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I understand that you want to get an Austin Matthews grill, but manhandling him like that, what are you doing? Yeah. Honestly, he did Pierre-Luc Dubois did a great job at getting in his grill for sure. It's just kind of one of those things that's not hockey. So
I still have no clue what preceded that, but it looked like he was trying to ride a bull in a bar for 8 seconds.
Absolutely, and it just took Matthews until the end to be pissed off enough to start fighting back a bit. But at the end, it's holy shit, man! It's just complete chaos. I mean, Neil Pionk, a 2-game suspension. I thought it could have been a little bit more. Maybe 4 or 5, to be completely honest with you. Spezza, you're hitting a very vulnerable player in Pionk, and I wouldn't be surprised if it is 5 games that he gets, or somewhere around there, because that was a dangerous hit. So, player safety. You never know exactly what's going to happen or what they're going to throw down the gauntlet, or I don't even know what the opposite of a gauntlet. Throw down a puppy playpen. Either way, you have no idea. So, but I do love the fact that that there was some passion, and that they were able to brew something up, because it was definitely fun to watch.
I believe you're looking for a slap on the wrist.
I like puppy playpen.
Yeah.
That's more fun.
Well, the Flyers tried to do
Kevin
that,
hates
and then
I was just
I
saying,
do not hate
Kevin
puppies.
hates puppies. So
well, the Flyers tried to have a puppy playpen on their ice, and then one of the dogs pooped on the Flyers logo. So.
Oh yeah, yes,
That was
yes,
hilarious.
yes. Oh no.
That dog was a Pens fan.
Like, just very quick aside, how, like, why are the dogs out there? How could that happen at center ice? How is that caught on video? How does that leak? Like, just how?
Yeah.
That's my
So many
question.
questions.
I know. I'm with you.
So many
I'm
questions.
Like,
They all start with how.
Oh,
Yeah.
I know.
And just to follow up, Dylan, I wasn't laughing you off. I say the Canucks take that and run.
Yeah.
Like it's like you look at that.
Well,
I'm a big
my
Josh
question
Manson fan. What?
why would Anaheim do that? Why? Why? Yeah, you get the best player, but God, stupid. No.
I would argue.
No.
I would argue there's a legitimate argument that the best player on that is either Raquel or Manson. By the way,
No.
If we're talking current, sure, but if Besser's at his best,
Kevin, like
Look what
you're
you've
still
done, Dylan.
wrong, but I'll give you the time and day to give me the Raquel argument. But Manson, as much as a fan as I am of him, no, not even fucking close.
okay. Well, there was some good passion there.
Kevin likes
I
to
like
stoke the fire, you know.
Well,
that was like Graham talking about how he would want to have Puljujarvi over Kachuk.
Oh my god, that is. I got to clip that. Thanks for reminding me. I need to clip that one. I don't want to embarrass Graham because that was not the best take he's ever had. But you know, it was a long day
Graham
for him.
embarrasses himself
for posterity.
Yes. I just can we touch on the McDavid hit? 5-minute major for boarding with 6:33 to go. And a game misconduct. Lots of debate on it. Does everyone think it was a major?
I actually haven't seen it myself. Didn't get caught up on that one.
I'll just let everyone know what I said in our group chat. I said it was borderline. I think it was someone. I think it's one of those hits that just comes out to how the receiving player turns out. Was it whoever got hit was bleeding? So it's an easy reaction call for the officials there to give it the 5 in the game. But it's a hit you see get just two minutes reporting a lot of the time. So
yeah, and the league did conclude today. It sounds like there would be no supplementary discipline on that.
And yeah, my take is very much in line with Sean's.
Go ahead, Devin.
I don't know if I agree that there's a lot of boarding calls that are similar to that because the player was unsuspecting. McDavid's coming in with speed. There was the player who got hit did have separation from the boards, and so I deem it as a fair assessment. Nothing more than a 5 game, though. That's for sure.
Yeah, I thought I would have ruled it a major. I saw a similar hit this weekend calling a hockey game. I don't remember if it was a 2 or a 5 or not, but they are trying to get that hit out of the game, so I do understand it. We can have a whole longer debate about the hits that McDavid takes, I guess, if you want, but I do that one specifically. I looked at it as a major, but that was me. But if it was a minor, I don't. But at the same time, if it came out as a minor, I don't know if I would have said that should have been a major. Like they completely missed it. I think it is subjective. You know.
Oh, definitely a lot of referee discretion there. But I like the process of, if it's an egregious foul and there's injury on the play or high risk of injury on the play because of the degree of violence on the play. Call the major penalty, have the actual consequence affect that game, and then you don't need to really worry about suspending anybody after that. So it's nice to see that happen more often. This isn't just a McDavid comment, and it's we've seen that here and there, different plays that pop up, and I prefer that route than to have the refs just continue to take the easy route of calling nothing or only a minor penalty, and then allowing the powers that be and the political influences that may be there, step in later to try and rectify the lack of justice there, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, good on the ref. I mean, it does take some courage to call a major and a game misconduct in a major Connor McDavid in Edmonton. That does take some gumption that we don't always see from officials. Let's be fair, in the NHL.
I think over the course of the history of the league, you probably see it's easier for them to make that kind of call when it's a visiting player. Yeah.
All right. Anything else we need to touch on before we call it an evening?
I guess, what are our expectations for the Canucks and Kings tonight?
Well,
welcome back, Alex Edler.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think, I mean, we'll get into this, but I think legitimate debate of how you honor Alex Edler going forward. I think, to me, one of the most underappreciated defensemen that ever played in this on this ice. Minute mature guy, and I think more missed than realized, I think, in the long haul in Vancouver community, and I hope he gets a really nice standing ovation tonight.
And I'm just thankful that he got his 100th goal before playing us, so that way he doesn't get it against us, because Lord knows that would happen to the Canucks.
And he got it on Jacob Markstrom. Where did Devin go?
He just buggered off.
What? Just say goodbye. That's poor guy.
He might have had internet issues.
Yeah, I think it was probably internet issues, but it also fits within his character of enter late, leave early.
Devin, the banker of our podcast. Okay. So there
yeah, see, he's back. He's back.
Hi.
We were having a nice, smoothly flowing run to the finish line here, and you had to screw that up.
Well,
I love it.
Good.
So how do we follow everyone?
I am Bearded Canuck 03. Just another reminder about the Pig and Puck Club contest. Please retweet any of our episodes, any of our pod clips, any of our game recaps to get an entry into the contest to win a ticket to the Flames versus Canucks game on April 23rd here in Calgary. And the word of the week to get 3 extra entries is hope.
Yes.
I'm on Twitter at TNoble, TNOBLE.
I'm at Schneids on most social media.
Follow me on Twitter at Gordhouse09.
I am KEBOLE, podcast_hockey, Facebook.com, The Hockey Podcast, YouTube.com, The Hockey Podcast. Subscribe wherever you get your audio. Like, share, retweet, love our stuff. Tell your friends. Tell your enemies if you want. Talk to people about our podcast. We're going to be looking at a game recap on Thursday when the Carolina Hurricanes take on the Calgary Flames as the Flames return home. Could that be Dan Vladar's first home start ever in Calgary? We'll see. We'll talk about that maybe. Who knows? But keep an eye out. We'll have our bunch of stuff coming up, pod clips, news packs, etc. Thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you all very soon. Bye for now. Bruce Boudreau is Ted Lasso before Ted Lasso was cool.